On this week's episode of Whitetail Cribs, we visit with Justin Hollandsworth from Ohio. Justin has been traveling across the Midwest to hunt giant whitetails over the last couple of decades, and he shares some of his most memorable hunts and bucks from the years. Tell us what you think about this week's episode in the comments below, and let's get right into it.
Hey guys, come on in. I'm Justin Hollandsworth. I live here in Ohio, and this is my house. You can start here. Here's my family. Here's my my son Mason. He's now much older than that. Now he's 11. Now he's 11 years old, and my wife Lori, and we've been together for 17 years now. Here's a deer that means a lot to me. He's actually the only one I have up here. This is a deer that I had about 4 years of history with and didn't even realize it until actually I killed him because he disappeared for an entire season. I never knew where he was at, but you can definitely tell he still had that same little sticker and that bladed brow. I was hunting a different deer that year, and this deer showed back up on that property. I didn't recognize him at the time, and that was on October 28th, and I hit this buck. Looked for him for 2 days with some friends, could not find the deer, and went on to hunt him the rest of the season and had 9 encounters with him. And with 5 days left of season, he showed back up in there, and I killed him, and that's my highest scoring deer, I guess. He's in the low 170s. These are a couple bucks that I'm hoping to locate this year. This is my son's room. He likes pictures of crazy looking dogs on the wall. And this is the very first shed that he had ever found. It was a deer we called 7 Up. I don't know whatever happened to that deer. I would have liked to caught up to that deer. And my son is actually, he loves to draw. He's way into art, and he's really good at it. Actually, I used to be as a kid, and then I just kind of stopped out of nowhere. Take you back out to the living room. We kind of went with the big open floor plan, just because we like to have friends and family and stuff like that over, and it was nice to to be able to entertain. And I always wanted a stone fireplace, just to I always liked that look with the the old barn mantle and stuff like that. But so this is a buck that a friend that we hunted this deer for several years. This year, we believe he was in the 200s, and we think that this year, which was the 2017 season, he was at least in the 90s. But that's exactly how he was though too. He was just some stickers and stuff like that coming off this side, but then he had this flyer, and then the following year, when I was going to hunt him, he didn't have any flyers anymore. Here's all my bucks besides the ones out in the garage and the one in the living room. I don't gun hunt at all. Every single deer that you see, I've killed every deer with a bow. Nothing against guns. I own guns. I like the idea of getting 25 yards and in. This is a deer here that I killed. I killed this buck in Iowa in 2015. I'd hunted Iowa in the past. In 2015, it was nothing like it used to be. I had 10 days to hunt, and it took me 9 of those days to kill that deer, and he's like in the low 150s. This is a deer that I had 3 years of history with. The year before, this deer was probably a 135-inch buck, and he was always super aggressive and ran some pretty nice deer off that farm. The following year, start running cameras, and he just blew up. He was way bigger than I ever expected him to get. He was probably the most cautious deer that I've ever hunted. I hunted that deer I had an edge wind, and when I say an edge wind, like my wind's here and he's here. And that deer, every 5 steps, he stopped, looked around, took a sniff of the air. I mean, he was every move that he made. I watched that deer for probably a good 100 yards before he ever made it into me. And that deer I killed, and he's on our show, Whitetail Addictions. This is a deer I have 4 years of history with. He's a mainframe 8. He's in the 160s. He's the biggest frame deer that I've ever killed. Had 3 years of sheds to him. He's just a cool old warrior that the year before I hunted him quite a bit and I could never get on him, and actually ended up killing another deer. And he's another one. He's on our Whitetail Addictions show as well. Actually, this year's episode. This deer is a deer that I called What a Shame, because the year before, this deer had this great big side and just a spike. So every time I seen the deer, I was like, God, what a shame. And the next year, he showed back up in there, and he blew up into, a low 160s deer. I mean, he's got 2 tines that are 13 inches. His brows are like 7 or 8 inches. And he was another, actually all 3 of these bucks right here, they were all killed within the first 10 days of October. 9 times out of 10, most of the deer that I kill are in October. If I don't have my deer down that I'm after, and November 1st is about to start, I'm worried. I'm really worried at that point, because I just don't have that luck in November. This deer here, this was another deer that I killed in Iowa in 2011. That year, I could not get in a tree out there without seeing a 150. There was so many big bucks. It was just phenomenal. And I hunted and I got on this deer the day before and made a move on him. I went in the morning or I was coming out in an evening and seen a bunch of sign and didn't have a stand with me. Hunted another farm that night, thought about that spot the whole time, came back in the dark the next morning and did a hanging hunt. And when I came back in to do that hanging hunt, I seen 2 shooters that morning, one being him and another deer, and I was about 80 to 100 yards off the mark. So about 10, 11 o'clock, I tore my whole set down, slid that 100 yards over towards that ditch where everything wanted to go. And that night it rained really hard all the way into the very next morning. It was still raining pretty hard in the morning when I got up. And I slipped back in there, and he came out of that ditch again, but just on the other side, just a little off the mark, and I snort wheezed that deer in and killed him. This is a deer I call a Vader. He was a deer that I had 3 years of pictures of. Passed him up 3 different times on video when he was 3 years old. Hunted him twice the following year. I had him coming out one night, and I had a doe and 2 fawns that came in behind me, and they got hinky, and he didn't like the situation. He left. The wind switched. I needed an east wind to hunt that deer, and I couldn't get back in there. And then that's when this 8 showed back up on this other property, and I went in and killed that deer the very next day. So I never hunted that deer again until just this past year. And I don't know, somebody wrote this, or I don't know where they came up with this, but there's been all this talk about how you can't hunt mornings in early October. I don't know who the hell ever wrote that, but that deer was killed at 7:50 on October 19th in the morning. So if your cameras are telling you something, and you got a deer walking in broad daylight, well, you got to go in there and hunt that deer. And that's exactly what took place. And I think a lot of it too has to do, and a lot of these deer, a lot of the early season deer anyways, not these rut bucks, a lot of it's due to, I think those 4 days leading into a full moon, you got the full moon, and then you got the day before that and after that. It always seems like it's slow in there. The 4 days prior to that and the 4 days after that. The 4 days prior to that leading into a full moon, evenings are phenomenal. They've always been so good to me. And then coming out of that, those 4 days after that full moon, the mornings are, phenomenal. And that's why that deer got killed. This is a deer not shot for score. Actually, I have no idea what he scores. But he was just a big old, he was 290 pounds on the hoof, and he was just a cool, gnarly buck with this great big, third main beam or whatever you call it. And these are a couple other bucks I shot kind of early on. This is a Kansas buck here that a good friend of mine, we were out there and he's already tagged out, and we jumped in a tree together that morning, and I cracked the horns and we rattled 5 bucks in at once. And this was a deer that I'd seen a few days prior to that, and I ended up shooting that deer, and my buddy Mike got the whole thing on video. And that was another deer that's on Whitetail Addictions. That's one of the episodes. It's just another 150s kind of deer that I killed back in the day. Actually put a horrible shot on this deer. Took me like a week to find him, but I really didn't give up on it. I just knew that that deer, the problem was I hit him, and right after I hit him, the coyotes got on him. And the coyotes pushed him hard, and when I found him, he was, there was hardly anything left of him. This is a buck that I shot in Kansas, just based off of coolness. I mean, I don't know what he scores. I have no idea. Never put a tape on him. But he's got a total of 15 or 16 points. And it just, all this stuff going on here is just so cool to me. This is another early season. This is an October 1st buck. A deer I had 3 years of pictures of and a shed too. And it was the first cold front in October, but it was October 1st. And there was a good rising moon, and I had the wind in my favor, and he had the wind in his favor. We were hunting that edge wind, and I was on a fence row, and he couldn't cut that fence row, that thick fence row. He couldn't cut all the way around, and he came in and shot that deer on video too. This was the very first deer I ever shot on video. I got on that piece that year, and I never got access to that farm until July or August. And I didn't know that much about it. And my good friend Andre DeQuisto told me, it doesn't matter, just go in there, have your way with the place. If you bump some deer, so what? And at that time, that was like a hard pill to swallow, and I didn't want to mess it up. And I was like, okay. So I went in there. There was 2 really good bucks in there, him and another one. Bumped that deer out of his bed, but that taught me a ton because I had my way with the whole place and figured it out and really got to learn it. And it took me, I actually killed that deer with my bow it was the first day of gun season when I finally caught back up to him and killed him. And this is just another nice 140s 10. And to me, this is kind of where it all really started for me. This is one of the original lone wolves. When I got onto this whole mobile style of hunting and not getting hung up and just, hunting the same spots and the same trees all the time. I mean, this stand was this truly changed everything for me. And matter of fact, I have never shot any Pope and Young class buck to date out of anything other than a DeQuisto designed tree stand. Every deer that I've ever shot has been out of something that Andre has invented, leading all the way up into, this is our new stand with Lone Wolf Custom Gear. And we have, this is what I'm going to run this year. It's the 1.0 with the 4 mini sticks with the 8ers. And the setup is just, there's just nothing to it. I did mine a little different. I kind of run this bag off the bottom so I don't have to run all those straps around there. And then these are just some sheds and stuff like that I found over the years. And I always keep a little separate shed pile for these are all the potentials could be around still. There's a couple of them there that I really hope show back up this year, and I got a good friend. My good friend Troy Pottinger's coming out from Idaho this year to hunt with me, so hopefully we have a bunch of these bucks around and he can take one home this year. Well, so that's my home. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and you know, I wish you guys you know, all the luck in the world this year, and hopefully you have success and safe in the woods this year. But for now, you're going to have to get out of this place.
Thanks for watching this episode of Whitetail Cribs. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And if you're wondering who the heck we are and how the heck we travel across the country to record these episodes, we are Exodus Trail Cameras and simply believe quality trail cameras should not cost a fortune. That's why 5 years ago, we started a direct-to-consumer company to tackle some of the biggest frustrations we've seen as typical trail camera users: product longevity, product performance, and customer service. We simply build cameras that flat out work in the harshest conditions and back them up with best-in-class customer service. We're proud to say we have the industry's leading 5-year warranty that even includes theft and accidental damage coverage. If you'd like to learn more about Exodus and the products we have to offer, click the link in the description and head over to our website. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in a comment below or shoot us an email.